Chris here. Thanks for stopping by the channel. Hope you're having a great day. So today I'm really excited to talk to you about a survival item called the cloak pin, which is a type of brooch that helps secure a piece of fabric to you without needing you to hold it in place with either one or both hands, thus freeing your hands to do other tasks. Now, this episode's a little more lighthearted. It's been a couple hard weeks for me. It's the middle of January 2025, and it's freezing outside. So I wanted to come inside, film in front of some great books, and tell you about cloak pins. Now, the first part of this video, I'll show you how it works, and then we'll get into the history of it. So if you're not as interested in the history, you can just see how it works and move on with your day. So it's a really cool functionality here. I'll come in close. And what this does is the needle pierces through both layers of fabric, and then it's secured by spinning this sort of loop which is attached to the needle. So to undo it here, you go into that opening and then you pull it free, and then your material can go away. Now, most of the time this was done with wool. So you can see here, this is just a blanket from an airplane, not the highest quality material, but wool with its weave, it's nice. It's a nice loose weave, especially how they made it when this was popular. And then it would not damage the material as much, even with such a large spike. So this is what it looks like, what a cloak pin looks like outside of the material. And that's how it functions. So going a little bit, we're about 2 minutes into the video now, and I'll go into the history of it in just a second. Let me put this back on. All right, now with our cloak pin once again secured, let me tell you a little bit about the history and why you as an outdoor enthusiast might find some enjoyment from having a cloak pin. Now this one is hand forged, and I'll leave a link down in the description below where you can get one of these as well. And what was really cool about them is, across history, before the sewing machine became prevalent, everything had to be sewn by hand. So if you've sewn anything by hand, for example, I've sewn, my Boy Scout merit badges back in the day, it was enough for me to realize that this is tough. I wouldn't want to have all the stitching that's needed to make a coat or your own clothing without a sewing machine. I don't even want to do it with a sewing machine, let alone without one. So cultures around the world would take the most basic type of fabric, which is a blanket, fresh off the loom. When you've woven all those fibers together, you end up with a roll, or, and if you spread that out, it's really just a blanket. For example, in Scotland, some of the most famous, users of a piece of fabric as an article of clothing is the great kilts. The original kilt was really just a blanket, and they used it in a specific way, wrapped it around themselves, and it was the kilt. In the Mediterranean, they wore togas very famously, really just a blanket that they wrapped around themselves. And this allowed other European countries, especially those that interacted with the Scandinavians, to adopt another simple way to wear fabric without having to do a lot of stitching and a lot of sewing. When sewing machines became prevalent, the need for having a cloak or some other kind of blanket as your article of clothing went away, because it wasn't as hard for you to sew together pieces of clothing and make a coat. This was especially worn in cooler climates because it's a quick, easy way for you to add another layer, and in some parts of you, 2 layers, because this has to pierce both layers. So in my front and around my shoulders, I have 2 layers of material as well. It became an article of jewelry. These are found in graves and around the world. Very elaborate. Mine here, it's not simply utilitarian. It has these little swirls at the bottom, and the metal itself is twisted. Just a hint of the elaborate history of this cloak pin. I found it really, really interesting. It's a useful item. You can also use it for other reasons in a survival situation. I know some have been put a 90-degree edge on it, so it can be used to help as a striker for starting a fire. It can be used as an awl. This is a pretty significant sharp piece of iron or other metal or even bone that you can use to pierce something in a survival or outdoors situation where you're limited on the kinds of tools you have. This is a fun one. It's a useful one. Once you have a cloak pin, you're going to want to find ways like this to, wear a cloak around, and it's kind of fun. Maybe not needed anymore, but definitely useful. Thanks again for stopping by the channel. I hope you found this interesting. Stay warm out there. Semper Paratus, and Coast Chris out.